This past April, I bought an old, hideous electronic typewriter for $40 on eBay. I live in New York City, and by that time, my husband and I barely left our Brooklyn walk-up. My brain felt soggy and thick, like overnight oats. I couldn't write for more than a few minutes at a time. As a person who writes for a living, this caused me no small amount of existential panic. The typewriter was meant to be a trick of sorts, something to get me going again. The afternoon it arrived, I plugged it in, sat down, and didn't get up for nearly 3 hours. I started writing letters to friends and family about what it felt like to be in New York, about how tense and terrifying and bizarre each day was. It became a kind of Victorian ritual, sitting for an hour every night to catch up on my correspondence. I enjoyed this so much that I eventually offered to write a letter to anyone who wanted one on Instagram. I expected a few dozen responses. Instead, I got close to 100. It seemed I had stumbled into a collective desire to connect in one of the only ways that felt safe to people. After all, the Postal Service, when it is not being willfully dismantled, is kind of magical. A letter arrives, borne over rivers and roads and seas, and suddenly the world feels a bit smaller. I realized that this was much bigger than anything I could tackle alone with my beaten-up typewriter. I had to connect people to each other. There's no easy way to organize a pen pal exchange in the 21st century. The best I could do was Elfster, a site designed for Secret Santa groups. I called mine Penpalooza. Over 1,000 people signed up in the first week, then 2,000, then 4,000. They're spread out over 30 countries: Switzerland, Australia, Singapore, Greece, India, the Philippines, Hong Kong. One person told me that out of thousands of pen pals, she'd been paired with someone from the very town in upstate New York where she grew up. A woman studying to be an immigration lawyer was paired with another woman who had been working in the field for decades. People included trinkets and gifts, tea bags, bookmarks, press flowers, confetti, vintage stamps, Dolly Parton stickers. When Liz, a digital marketer living in Ireland, opened up a letter from her pen pal in the States, she was surprised to find 20 pages of handwritten calligraphy.
The first letter I was so like, my name is Liz and I live in Ireland and it is so nice here. And then by the time I got her second one, I was like, okay, so this is the vibe we're taking?
Now, Liz prepares herself to write long letters to her pen pal. She puts on music and sits down with a glass of wine. She told me it's like keeping a diary. Laura Harvey is a textile designer in Northwest Georgia. Her pen pal, Caitlin Ruiz, is a literature grad student in Pennsylvania. They bonded over Anne of Green Gables and became fast friends, exchanging a dozen letters this summer. Caitlin sent Laura recommendations for nature writers. Laura sent back a vintage wristlet and started to keep a journal of Caitlin's recommendations.
Because of her, I have a little, I call it my curiosity book. And so when she tells me about something I'm curious about it, I'll write it down in my book so I can study and research later. I'm just excited to be curious about something in the time where every day is the same.
While the Penpalooza members were forging new bonds, I became something of a part-time pen pal coordinator. Elfster was built for exchanges among colleagues and family members, not thousands of people at once. It crashed every time I tweeted about signups. So I started to chat late at night with our technical support liaison, a kindly woman named Megan. She would answer my DMs in jolly Christmas vernacular, running my questions up to the North Pole and blaming the crashes on naughty elves. But the work I was doing was nothing compared to the people who were responsible for delivering our mail. Over the summer, after Trump's super donor Louis DeJoy became Postmaster General, overtime was slashed for hundreds of thousands of postal workers and deliveries were delayed. Every stamp started to feel like a little wish. Not just that your letter would reach its destination quickly, but that it would get there at all. For Lindsay Lee Wallace, one of my own pen pals, the whole debacle made her think of her mother, Deborah, who passed away last year. Deborah was a postmaster in Connecticut. As a kid, Lindsay would spend her time in the post office basement, sorting through all the packages and letters that couldn't be delivered for one reason or another. Lindsay told me that her mother had a complex but ultimately rewarding relationship with the post office.
I know that she loved people. She loved knowing things about them and being able to help them, and she loved when they paid attention to what she had to say. And sometimes when they were rude to her, she liked having power over them just enough to shrug and say, like, clearly savoring it, "Sorry, ma'am, but that's just how much a stamp costs."
Lindsay joined Penpalooza as a kind of tribute to her mom. She explained to me that her mom had always really wanted to travel.
My mom was a hippie and I think kind of a restless person. She liked to collect things from other places, prints, decorations, and magnets, and she really wanted to go to New Zealand or Australia, but money was always kind of tight, and heat and stress are really bad for multiple sclerosis or MS, which she had.
Now, Lindsay's decided to send her mom on those trips. She's mailed her mom's photo across the world to the places she couldn't visit when she was alive. Penpalooza riders have offered to show her around Edinburgh, the Alps, a Portuguese beach. These days, a letter from New Zealand or Australia could take a week to reach someone in the US, or a month. It feels like a crapshoot, and yet oddly, Penpalooza keeps growing. People keep buying stationery and felt-tip pens and sharing their letters with me online. One person recently sent a whole care package full of local cheese and jam. I still write letters nearly every night, alone with my typewriter. It's become this deeply intimate, almost compulsive activity. I find myself confessing things to my pen pals that I haven't even told my longtime friends, and vice versa. One of my favorite pen pals, Rebecca, described it this way.
There's a trust that you're sending something off to live with somebody, right? I think then what you put in what you send can create a sort of mutuality that we were both vulnerable with each other, and that creates a sort of shared understanding.
Emily Dickinson once wrote to her own pen pal, "A letter always feels to me like immortality, because it is the mind alone without corporeal friend." I think she was onto something. Letters are a way to fling our minds and words outside of our bodies. Even under the best of circumstances, there is a delay, a period where the letter is an object of hope, in transit between the present and the future.